Hey there, 8th grade. Here we go. Today we're talking about fractions, decimals, and percents or percentages. So name, date, title. Here we go. Notes. Regular fractions, decimals, and percentages. This is why we talk about them over and over so much. Just kind of drill them after you get your number sense with whole numbers is because they all express parts of a whole. So we get really good at adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing, thinking about counting early on in your elementary education, doing all these operations with whole numbers, and then we say, well, what if you don't have a whole number? What if you don't have a full set of something? What if you don't have an entire cake? Or all these crazy word problems where they talk about eating 27 and 5/10 watermelons one day. So we start to talk about parts of a whole and make sure we can do some operations when we don't have nice, clean numbers, because we don't always have them. What we need to know is about converting between these different values and knowing the difference between them and being able to judge which is more, which is less. And so what we want to know about percentages is that they can be thought of fractional values of 100. So what I mean by percentages are fractional values of 100. Well, what I'm saying is everyone knows that 100% is one whole. You gave your best ever. You gave 100%, or you got a 100% on the test. You got everything right. You get the full test correct. So if you have a value out of 100, let's say you have 18 out of 100, hopefully this wouldn't be a test score. This is the same as 18%. So this is kind of how we think of percents. This is why percents are useful. They tell us out of 100 because we're big into base 10 systems. They can also be created by multiplying decimals by 100. So in this case, if you think of 18 out of 100, that's the decimal 1800ths. And so what we're trying to say is we know that fractional values where we have part of a whole instead of the whole can sometimes be weird to write. We have to use decimals, we have to use fractions. Percentages help with that because they say, okay, we know that you have part of a whole. Let's multiply by 100. Multiplying by 100, multiplying by powers of 10 shifts place values. Our decimal kind of moves to the right. Place values move to the left, actually. So when we multiply by 100, this is going to shift twice. We get 18%. So that's another way to do it, is just to move that decimal or to think of it that way. So this way we're talking about part of a whole still, but we can use whole numbers to do it. They're just percentages. Now, the last two are just about different conversions. So fractions can be converted to decimals by dividing. So if you have 18 out of 100 and you wanted to turn that into a decimal, well, you would just say, oh, this fraction bar right here, that's the same as the division bar. So I could just divide 18 by 100, and you would end up getting the correct decimal. And finally, decimals can be converted to fractions by reading. So if I have this decimal, and I keep using the same one, let's do this then. If I have this decimal right here and I want to know, oh gosh, what fraction is that? I don't know. I don't have it memorized. Well, you don't need to. You just need to read it. What is this? 0.186? No, that doesn't help you. This is 186. What place value does it end in? Tenths, hundredths, thousandths. This is 186 thousandths. So there we go. That's the fraction it's equal to. Then you could do some simplifying if you were asked to. But really, we just read it. We said this is 186 tenths, hundredths, 186 thousandths. So that's all we had to do. Let's move on to some examples. So the first two I have here, this is what you could be asked to do. We could say, convert this to a fraction and to a percentage. We have 68 hundredths. Oh gosh, I already got one of my answers. 0.68, if you read it like a mathematician, that's 68 hundredths. So we should have said a simplified fraction. Now if I want this as a simplified fraction, I know I need to simplify this because they're both even. They're divisible by 2 at least. That's what most people do first. They'll divide by 2. This would give us 34 out of 50, but these are both even still. We can divide by 2 again. And we're going to get 17 out of 25, or 17/25. That's the simplified fraction that 68 hundredths is equal to. Now what if we wanted to get a percentage? Well, to get a percentage, we said we just multiply a decimal by 100. So 68 hundredths could be thought of, okay, 68 out of 100, what percent did you get on that test? That's just the same as 68%. It's the fractional value with the denominator of 100. What's our numerator? 68, that's the percentage. only when the denominator is 100. So that works. Or you could just think multiply by 100, you move the decimal twice to the right. Number 2, convert to a simplified fraction and decimal. So you have 212%. Now this one's a little bit different because we're used to percentages being between 1 and 100 because they're part of one whole, significant parts of one whole. In this case, if we have more than 100%, we have more than 1. So this one's going to be actually more than one whole. Let's do the decimal first, and we're going to do the opposite of that conversion we just did. We said, oh, if you're going from decimal to percentage, you multiply by 100 and move the decimal twice to the right. If we're going to divide by 100, place values change in the opposite way. So the decimal this is equal to is 2 and 12 hundredths. Does that make sense? Okay, this is more than 1, 2 and 12 tenths, and this is more than 1, more than 100%. So this makes sense. We also need a simplified fraction. So this would be 212%. Again, we said any fraction is, the percentage is just the number over 100. Now again, these are both divisible, so let's simplify this. Let's divide by 2 again. You know it's going to make us divide twice. And we'll get 106 over 50. Okay, we'll divide by 2 again. Again, equivalent fractions, just like we practiced with proportions. And we get 53 over 25. Now, that would be fine as a fraction, simplified fraction. It's improper though, so if we wanted to make this into a mixed number, we would say 25 goes into 50 twice, and then we would have 3 pieces left over. How big are those pieces? They're 25ths. 2 and 3 25ths. Okay, that makes sense as well. Let's go on to one more example before I let you loose on your own. And it says, Mr. S ate 3 of the 12 boxes of mac and cheese. Love it. It's the cheesiest. Express this value as a fraction, decimal, and percentage. So we need all 3. Well, I ate 3 of the 12. So I didn't eat everything we have. I ate a part of it. 3 of the 12. Easiest to first write as a fraction. Okay, but we want to simplify it, of course. So we'll say these are both divisible by 3. Divide numerator and denominator by 3, and we'll get an equivalent fraction. What equivalent fraction do we get? We get 1/4. Now, hopefully, you have the decimal and the percentage memorized. If you don't, let's use our other methods. We'll say 1/4. What decimal is that? Okay, well, let's practice our dividing to get decimals. The mistake, people aren't used to having the smaller number as the dividend, but we need to know that 1/4 is 1 being divided by 4. So 4 is on the outside. The answer is not 4 here. 4 doesn't go into 1. Okay, this makes sense. We need to bring our decimal up. We have a value less than 1. This is great. 3/12 has to be equal to a decimal that's less than 1 as well. 4 goes into 10 twice. That goes 8. Subtract, we get 2, bring down a 0. 4 times 5 is 20. Okay, we're all good here. 25 hundredths. Now the easiest way to do this, I think, would be to say, okay, if the decimal is 25 hundredths, what's our percentage? Well, it's just the numerator when our denominator is 100. So this would be 25%. 25 out of 100 is 25%. You could have done that up here as well. You could have said, okay, we want our denominator to be 100. We need to multiply top and bottom by 25. And hopefully you know a thing or two about quarters, getting that money. So we have a fraction simplified as 1/4. We have a decimal, it's 25 hundredths. We have a percentage, it's 25%. That's all good. Hopefully these make sense. If not, ask me questions. But I'm going to leave you with these 2 to do on your own. First one says convert to a fraction and a decimal. That's 0 and 0.7%. So make sure you don't just do these quickly. You have to think about, that's not a very big percentage. It's less than 1%. So it's a very small value. You need to think about what are the rules, what's the process for changing that to a fraction and a decimal. Finally, number 2 is convert to a percentage and a decimal. You're given this fraction. It's 13/65, or 13 over 65. So best of luck with these. Catch you later.